Welcome to Windows on the World. Now tonight I'm going to be covering what's happening in the news, and this new term, fake news, which is being spread everywhere, may backfire against the mainstream media, who seem to be the propagators of most of it. Now, the right to free and unrestricted speech is my inalienable right, and I, for one, will not tolerate any suppression through lobbyists or government or any public or private institution. And it's very important that people stand up to this. Now, the shutdown of real news by the mainstream media is beyond a joke, but it is still funny. I mean, some of these stories are totally ridiculous, such as the tactics being used against Brexiteers by the national press. Now, the tactics used against the public are now on a par with any police state. The main weapon is through the use of political correctness and, of course, these objectives of cultural Marxism. It was reported in the Metro newspaper today, which is really a propaganda sheet of PR nonsense, which is given away as a free newspaper because nobody would buy it. It's given away to people who get on their tube trains when they go home, so it's distributed to millions of people. It states in there today that the Moors murderer Ian Brady, 78, who sexually abused and killed 5 children in the 60s with his lover Myra Hindley, has railed against the judges blocking the Brexit vote. Brady said, now, this is very interesting, listen to this quote, "Those 3 public school judges who dredged up a law from the 17th century to obstruct the people's vote for Brexit additionally exemplify the corrupt establishment and the myth of a politically independent judiciary." Well, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? You can imagine him, right? This guy is so ill that he has to be hoisted about. He can barely breathe. He's got about half a lung left. And he's going to come out with something as eloquent and thought out as that at the end of his life. I don't think so. This is another PR statement that's being used against the public. Now, particularly despicable the way that they've used Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, to now demonise people who vote Brexit, as they did with the Joe Cox murder, which we reported on in last week's show, and you can find that on there at windowsontheworld.net. And the anomalies in that story and the way that has been used against the British public, the majority of the British public who voted to leave Europe. Now, obviously, this quote, it's clearly been written and not spoken. This stupid newspaper, the Metro, has been publicising this stuff for a long time. And if you want a short PR piece of nonsense, then go there and have a laugh, basically. But we've now got this other story today where this group called National Action, who are self-pronounced paramilitaries, have been banned as a terrorist organisation. Now, this is all over the internet. It's in the papers. It was a story in the Independent. And it says, British neo-Nazi group National Action to be classed as a terror organisation and banned in unprecedented move. The fascist group tweeted a picture in support of terrorist who killed pro-Europe MP Joe Cox. So again, we're getting the Joe Cox murder brought into it. Now, there's this ridiculous picture of them. They look like a load of coppers, and they're all dressed in black with bomber jackets, with balaclavas and sunglasses on, with their faces comically blurred out. Not that you can see who they are. Now, it says here, a British neo-Nazi group, and this is the thing we're hearing all the time, neo-Nazis. Now, I'm not saying that these people actually don't exist. Maybe there are a few of them around, but they are isolated people who do not form massive groups which are about to overthrow a government or turn public opinion. Now, this neo-Nazi tag is being used by groups who are also pushing the anti-Semitism campaign, and it was very much used as propaganda against people who voted for Brexit, as we know. It says here, a British neo-Nazi group is expected to be labelled a terror organisation and banned in a landmark first for the UK. An order prescribing fascist group National Action is due to be laid before Parliament on Monday. It will be the first time membership of a far-right group has been outlawed in the UK. The self-styled nationalist youth movement has praised and glorified Thomas Mayer, the white supremacist, who murdered Labour MP Joe Cox in what a court described as a terrorism offence, and employs anti-Semitic language lifted direct from Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. Now, I think any sensible person can see who's behind this, and we're going to get onto them a bit later in the show. But it says here, the group's Yorkshire branch, which is believed to consist of about 100 fascists, also encourages lone wolf activism on its website, a phrase which usually refers to acts of terrorism committed by individuals. Here we go, Thomas Mayer again, right? So it all has to go back to him because that's the most recent case that they can quote from. Now, this is very interesting. If you look at their website, for instance, you will see that you become a member of it. So basically, this looks like a group that's been set up to track people. And they have these marches, which there don't seem to be that many people there. I'm just looking at one now. There's a small group of people who are involved in this march. Now, they're basically waving flags around, being accompanied by the police. They look very much like the agent provocateurs who are there to shut down protests, which, as we know, or any educated person knows, are actually undercover police, agent provocateurs who wear black and cover their faces. They spray an anarchist sign on a wall, and then they start a bit of trouble, nothing much usually, and the police generally shut down the protest. So what we've got here looks like a fake group that's been set up, probably by the intelligence services, and now the government are banning this group, which has probably been set up by the intelligence services. So it's very, very interesting. Now, some of the stuff on the website is even funnier. Here's their blog, which is from an anti-Brexit march. One group was tasked with going into the demonstration itself and gaining intelligence. Gaining intelligence, eh? It does sound as though it's been written by somebody who's a trained civil servant working for the police, doesn't it really? They found the demonstration consisted of melts, who talked about their latest jaunt to the Alps and the offers on at Waitrose. Nothing new, but safely in the demo, they were good reliable backup in the event everyone somehow got arrested. The other groups remained on the periphery of the march as it winded through central London. Noting the lack of police presence and where the press were tending to congregate, we began to feel increasingly confident. We noted a group of pro-Brexit counter-demonstrators led by Jez Turner. Now, Jez Turner, I think, is a BNP supporter. He's not an ultra-radical person. He could be classed as a racist, however, but what they're doing is tying themselves to him. And this is what these fake groups or these set-up groups, they tie themselves to a real individual. So that's just my supposition of that. I haven't got any evidence, though, but it does look a bit dodgy. It carries on. It was felt that this was where there would be a flashpoint that we could take advantage of. So they're already saying they're agent provocateurs. Our group, which was tasked with unfurling the banner. So again, they're talking about this as though it's like some kind of police operation or with a military kind of hierarchy. Yes, it says they're unfurling the banner and positioning ourselves in front of a march of several thousand. We didn't hesitate. We simply went for it. The four of us versus several thousand wet blankets. The odds looked good. When we jumped out with chants of Brexit now, the entire march was spooked and ground to a halt for about 15 seconds. Well, this is unbelievable, isn't it? They really did stop the action there for 15 seconds. Realising who we were, the opposition looked at us with utter hatred, and the entire crowd started mooing like a herd of cattle. They've even put a moo sound in which goes, boo! Right. When they finally made it to within arm's reach of our banner, some mouthy bitch screeched, "Just push them out of the way," but none dared touch us. A deranged old woman, who later we learned was Eddie Izzard, began wildly screaming, "This is the face of Brexit!" As we were not obstructing the entire length of the road, people were moving past us on the flanks, so we began to move back slowly. The idea was to troll them for the entire march. At this point, we saw the blue bibs meaning the police, trying to move in us from the sides, but we were protected by the mass of people at the choke points. Now, all this sounds like it was written by somebody in low-level intelligence, either in the police or it could be a government security organisation, maybe MI5. But it says they're self-pronounced paramilitaries. And it says on their presentation, so if you wanted to join them, they actually give you tips on your presentation. It says, imagine you're on a march right now and the camera zooms in on you. Are you consistent with the image put out by the group? If not, that is okay, but we expect to see an improvement. If after 2 months nothing has changed, then we will be obliged to discontinue your involvement. Presentation also includes sticking to the dress code on demonstrations and looking good in general. Now, these lot are all dressed in sunglasses in black with these boots on, holding these stupid flags. So there is only one way they present themselves, and they just look like a bunch of undercover police, right? So they're saying you've got to look like an undercover cop, really, in the end, to join us. It says, if you are attending a training event, this is hilarious. Yeah? This is absolutely hilarious. It says on this site, if you are attending a training event, you will be expected to take a blow to the head. This is part of making you a better person, but you need to be willing to help yourself. Now, this is just so stupid, because if you're part of your training, I mean, if these were a proper group, they should have said, well, you'd be expected to be able to take a blow to the head and defend yourself, but they're actually saying, no, as part of the training, we're going to try and hit you in the head. Now, it carries on with this newspaper article from The Independent. The group has also altered its listing on Google to read "Death to Traitors, Freedom for Britain," a slogan which echoes the phrase Mayor said in court when asked to give his name soon after being charged with Joe Cox's murder. Now go to our show on that, Joe Cox Murder and Propaganda, at windowsontheworld.net, because we had people who were in court during that trial, and there's so many anomalies within the whole narrative of the Thomas Mayor case that anybody with a critical thought in their head will be questioning the whole thing. It says here, Mayor received a life sentence for the killing when he was convicted last month. The 53-year-old was revealed to have a Third Reich Eagle monument embellished with a swastika and other Nazi paraphernalia in his bedroom. Now, we've described all this on last week's show, and the shopping list that was given on this site called Tell Mama, which is about Muslims being able to out terrorists in their own community. It's a part of an organisation called Faith Matters, which is meant to be one of these interfaith organisations. But the shopping list on there was so ridiculous, it looked as though it had been created. It says here, the Yorkshire branch of National Action has been accused of seeking to incite the murder of Jewish people, tweeting a derogatory term used by the Nazis to describe Jews during the Holocaust. Tykes, gassing kikes is our motto. Yorkshire needs you. Anti-communism, pro-national socialism. #defend Britain. Now, who is putting these tweets out? Because there's now a move that we're going to get onto later by the Anti-Defamation League and Google to actually start going after people. Now, if you've got a Twitter account, they know who you are. So anybody who says they've been threatened on Twitter is really over egging the pudding, because something that's going to be seen by millions of people is not really a threat. And we've had all this before with Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow in North London, saying she was being stalked and insulted on Twitter. Well, the whole point of being in public office is that you're meant to believe in what you stand for. If you believe in what you stand for, there are going to be people who don't like it. And if you don't like it, then get out of public office is what I say. Because all this is going towards world communism, and that's what all these people are leading us into. But it goes on with more and more and more propaganda. It says the British government appears to be taking the threat posed by the far right more seriously than in the past, leading to speculation other groups could be banned in the near future. So really what this is about is trying to get people to be even more scared of what they're saying, so that they don't have any free speech or volition, so that if you're anti-EU and pro-Brexit, then basically you're with the terrorists. And this is disgusting propaganda that's being initiated by elements within our own government. It says, speaking after May's conviction, Home Secretary Amber Rudd said, "I am determined that we challenge extremism in all its forms, including the evil of far-right extremism." Now, what she's referring to is what Thomas May said, which was Britain first, or put Britain first. Now, we've already covered this, that one of the people who was there, one of the eyewitnesses, stated no one shouted Britain first or put Britain first. This has been used as a propaganda tool. So you've got this MP who's in public office who's actually stating as fact something that we only know as hearsay to shut down a group called Britain First. Now, I don't particularly agree with what Britain First do. That's beside the point. But I will defend their right to say what they want to as long as they are not involved in inciting hatred. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because the law really only goes into what inciting hatred is. A lot of this other stuff gets very woolly, and now we've got this new definition of anti-Semitism by Theresa May. So we're moving on now to Russia Today, and an article on Russia Today. It says Britain will reportedly become one of the first nations to adopt an official definition of anti-Semitism, following an increase in the number of reported incidents targeting Jews. Now, these incidents are reported by the Community Security Trust, which is a Jewish organisation. So if somebody Jewish phones up and they feel as though they've been insulted, they can phone this hotline and it will go down as anti-Semitism, even though we've got no proof it actually is. It says Prime Minister Theresa May is apparently set to deliver a speech in which she will state that the adoption of the definition means there will be one definition of anti-Semitism. In essence, language or behaviour that displays hatred towards Jews because they are Jews, and anyone guilty of that will be called out on it. Now that's interesting, because there's no real change to the law then. It just means that people who incite hatred could be prosecuted. Now, what I think a lot of these Zionists, particularly the lobbyists, are trying to do is they're trying to close down this and get into the propaganda that people who are anti-Zionist are anti-Jewish or they're anti-Semitic. Now, this came about years ago when Michael Chertoff, who's the head of Homeland Security in America, and he was stating that if you were anti-Zionist, you were anti-Jewish. Now, it's obviously escalated and they're trying to get it more and more into the public domain, and we're going to go into that as far as that impacts on the Labour Party in a short while. But getting back to this, it says she will also say that it's unacceptable that there is anti-Semitism in this country, according to pre-extracts from the speech cited by The Independent. It is even worse that incidents are reportedly on the rise. As a government, we are making a real difference, and adopting this measure is a groundbreaking step, she will state. Well, we're talking about our leader here, this leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, whose first trip when she was assigned the job was to see the chief rabbi. So it says no details were available as to where May's speech was scheduled. Okay, now the definition was developed in May by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, an intergovernmental organisation backed by 31 countries. The text states that anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Although the British police currently use a version of this definition, the UK's official adoption of the definition would also mean it will be used by councils, universities and other public institutions. Now, we're already seeing this, that we're starting to see propagandised statements that are being put out on university campuses. They're trying to control the narrative everywhere. Meanwhile, the UK government is due to release its response to an anti-Semitism inquiry conducted by a committee of lawmakers on Tuesday, which found that Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn failed to provide consistent leadership in tackling the problem within his party. The UK's adoption of the anti-Semitism definition comes after a rise in reported incidents against Jews. In the first half of 2016, the number of incidents recorded by the Community Security Trust, which provides security advice to country's Jewish population, rose by 11%. Well, I think that there was not that many of these complaints. It's not an epidemic. The CST said most of the incidents in the first half of the year took place in April, May and June, when the issue of discrimination against Jews received a larger amount of media attention. Right, Britain is home to 270,000 Jews, representing the fifth largest Jewish population in the world. So, let's now go on to how this impacts the Labour Party. We've covered quite a lot there, but there is a lot to cover. There are so many fake news stories and propaganda issues coming from the mainstream media, and we'll keep reporting from them as they are getting more ridiculous. Things are escalating, but it looks like the controlling of the narrative is falling apart a little bit, sometimes with hilarious consequences. So remember, keep watching those, watching us, watching Windows on the World, and go to the website for our articles and also everything in our video archive, which is linked to our YouTube channel.